Yoda could have killed General Grievous in seconds, not minutes, not after a prolonged duel. Seconds. 900 years of Force mastery, concentrated in a being whose power dwarfed anything the cyborg general could bring to bear. Count Dooku knew this, knew it so well that his explicit instruction to Grievous regarding the Grand Master was unequivocal. Do not engage under any circumstances. And Grievous obeyed. Throughout 3 years of war, across hundreds of engagements with Jedi Knights and Masters, the most dangerous, non-force-sensitive warrior in the galaxy avoided one green-skinned being barely 2 feet tall. Smart. But here's the thing nobody talks about. Yoda never killed Grievous. Not because he couldn't. The combat math wasn't even close. The Grand Master would have dismantled him like a child pulling apart a broken toy. The reason Grievous survived every day that Yoda drew breath had nothing to do with capability. Yoda wasn't a hunter, and hunting Grievous was the only way to finish him. Before we dig into why the most powerful Jedi alive was fundamentally unsuited to end the cyborg general, we need to address the question that's been driving Star Wars fans insane for 20 years. Because it connects directly to what made Yoda so uniquely dangerous, and so uniquely wrong for this particular mission. Why didn't the Jedi just use the Force on Grievous? The question haunts every discussion of the cyborg's victories. Grievous wasn't Force-sensitive, no midi-chlorians, no connection to that cosmic energy field that turned farm boys into galaxy-saving heroes. A Jedi facing him should have been able to freeze him in place, crush his mechanical limbs, fling him into walls like a rag doll. Someone like Yoda, whose telekinetic abilities could lift starfighters, should have been able to crumple Grievous's duranium frame into scrap metal without igniting a lightsaber. And yet, the records of Grievous's campaigns reveal why theoretical advantage crumbled against practical reality. It wasn't force resistance. He had none. It was something Dooku had engineered into every aspect of the cyborg's creation. Something that exploited a fundamental truth about how Jedi accessed their power. Distraction. The Force, as wielded by light side practitioners, demanded mental clarity. Not anger, not passion. Composure. Connection. Jedi needed to center themselves to access their full telekinetic power, and Grievous's entire attack methodology was designed to deny them that centering. He dropped from ceilings without warning, emerged from shadows, split his torso to reveal a second pair of arms mid-combat, 4 lightsabers spinning in patterns that created visual chaos impossible for organic eyes to track. His legs bent backward, letting him skitter across surfaces like something from a nightmare. That distinctive, rasping cough. Damaged organic lungs struggling inside a metal shell. Reminded opponents constantly that something was suffering in there. Something horrifying and wrong. By the time most Jedi realized what they faced, they were already reacting, already defensive. Their concentration devoted entirely to not dying in the next 3 seconds, rather than mounting telekinetic offense. Combat data from surviving witnesses tells the rest. Grievous's cybernetic speed let him close distance before force techniques could manifest. The gathering of concentration for a telekinetic assault created momentary vulnerability windows. He exploited them with mechanical precision. Jedi who stepped back to center themselves found him already upon them. Those who managed force pushes discovered his clawed feet dug into flooring, anchoring him against manipulation. Those who caught him off guard, usually when he was gloating, found his mechanical durability let him absorb impacts and recover before follow-ups could land. The pattern of his victories wasn't random. Young knights, newly elevated and still developing their blade work, died in disproportionate numbers. Jedi who relied heavily on force abilities as their primary combat approach? Dead. Practitioners of aggressive lightsaber forms who tried to match his assault? Burned out against mechanical endurance that never flagged. By mid-war, Grievous had accumulated dozens of lightsabers from fallen Jedi, each one a trophy, each one proof that overwhelming force potential meant nothing against an enemy engineered to deny the opportunity to use it. That's why most Jedi couldn't just force hold him. Not because it was impossible, because he never gave them the chance. But Yoda wasn't most Jedi. 9 centuries of accumulated mastery meant something beyond raw power. It meant that the centering most Jedi required had become, for Yoda, as automatic as breathing. The connection to the Force that younger practitioners needed to consciously maintain was simply his permanent state of being. Grievous's psychological warfare, the horror, the chaos, the mechanical nightmare of his appearance, would have registered to Yoda as noise, irrelevant static against 900 years of confronting dark side threats, Sith conspiracies, and galactic crises. Dooku understood this perfectly. His former master had trained him, had watched Yoda's capabilities for decades before his fall to the dark side. He knew that no configuration of cybernetic advantages, no amount of psychological preparation, could overcome what the Grand Master represented. Against Yoda, every element of Grievous's design became meaningless. The intimidation tactics? Yoda had faced beings who made Grievous look like a malfunctioning protocol droid. The multi-blade assault? Yoda's mastery of Ataru, Form 4, the acrobatic style, would have let him dance inside Grievous's guard, while 4 lightsabers carved empty air around him. The mechanical speed? The Force flowed through Yoda with such completeness that his reactions transcended physical limitation. His size would have been advantage, not weakness. Against Grievous's sweeping multi-blade attacks, designed to overwhelm humanoid-sized opponents, a being barely 2 feet tall became an extraordinarily difficult target. The cyborg would have been fighting an enemy who existed below the optimal range of his weapons, moving too fast to track, striking from angles his programming hadn't anticipated. So Grievous avoided Yoda, completely. Throughout the entire Clone Wars, no record exists of the two engaging in combat. Not a skirmish, not a chance encounter, not a moment where Grievous found himself on the same battlefield as the Grand Master. This wasn't cowardice, it was intelligence. Perfect tactical calculation, executed by a being whose survival instincts had been honed through cybernetic enhancement and Sith training alike. Which raises the obvious question. If Yoda could have destroyed Grievous so easily, why didn't the Jedi Council simply send him to do it? The answer reveals something fundamental about what the Grievous problem actually required, and why Yoda, for all his power, was the wrong tool for this particular job. Start with who Yoda was. Not just Grand Master, not just the most powerful Jedi alive. Yoda was the philosophical anchor for an institution spanning thousands of years and millions of practitioners across the galaxy. When young Jedi struggled with the nature of the Force, they came to Yoda. When masters faced ethical dilemmas that doctrine couldn't resolve, they sought Yoda's counsel. When the Order needed guidance through eras of peace and conflict alike, Yoda provided it. For 900 years, he had shaped the Jedi into what they were. Their values, their traditions, their understanding of their place in the cosmic order. The Clone Wars had forced him into military leadership he found deeply uncomfortable. Commanding armies when his nature called for contemplation and instruction. Making tactical decisions that sent beings to their deaths. Watching the institution he'd devoted centuries to building become a war machine serving political ends he distrusted. Every moment of the conflict violated something essential in Yoda's character. He adapted. Of course he did. He was Yoda. He led strategically, made decisions affecting the war's course, occasionally took the field when absolute necessity demanded his presence. But observe what those moments looked like. Yoda appeared at Geonosis when the Republic's military capacity had to be demonstrated. Appeared on Kashyyyk when the Wookiees, allies he'd known for centuries, faced existential threat. Appeared when the stakes were civilization level, when his specific presence could alter the balance of entire campaigns. He reacted to crises. He didn't hunt individuals. The dogged, relentless pursuit of a single enemy across star systems? The patient tracking? The repeated engagements when initial confrontations failed to produce results? The willingness to chase until quarry was finally cornered, regardless of duration or obstacles? That contradicted everything Yoda was. Yoda waited for problems to come to him. He didn't chase them across the galaxy with obsessive determination. His centuries of wisdom had taught him that attachment to specific outcomes created suffering, that pursuing personal grudges led to the dark side, that a Jedi's role was to serve the Force's will rather than impose their own. Hunting Grievous would have required Yoda to become something he wasn't, to dedicate himself to the destruction of one being at the expense of his responsibilities to the Order, to the war effort, to the thousands of Jedi who needed his guidance. Even if the military outcome justified the allocation of his abilities, the philosophical corruption of that choice would have undermined everything Yoda represented. And here's what people forget. Grievous survived by running. The cyborg's entire survival strategy was built around recognizing losing engagements and terminating them before losses became permanent. His mechanical body could sustain damage that would kill organic beings. His speed allowed him to disengage from unfavorable situations. His lack of warrior's pride meant he felt no shame in retreat. Against any opponent who demonstrated the ability to defeat him, Grievous simply left. Imagine Yoda pursuing him across the galaxy. The Grand Master appears on some separatist-held world. Grievous flees. Yoda returns to his responsibilities, while intelligence works to locate the cyborg again. Weeks pass. Grievous is found. Yoda goes to confront him. Grievous flees again. The pattern repeats indefinitely. The most powerful Jedi alive, playing endless games of hyperspace tag with an enemy who had perfected the art of strategic cowardice. It was beneath Yoda's role, beneath his dignity, beneath his understanding of what the Force required from him. He could beat Grievous, would never hunt him. The same limitation applied, in different forms, to nearly every Jedi who could have matched the cyborg general in combat. Take Mace Windu. He stood among the greatest warriors the Order had ever produced. His mastery of Vapad, Form 7, the most dangerous lightsaber style, made him arguably the single most lethal duelist alive. Vapad did something other forms couldn't. It transformed combat fury into a conduit for the light side. Where other Jedi suppressed their fighting instincts, Windu embraced them, danced on the edge of darkness without falling. Against Grievous, this meant facing an opponent whose methodology relied entirely on overwhelming aggression, with a Jedi who could match and exceed that aggression while maintaining perfect clarity. They fought. On Boz Pity, during the Outer Rim sieges of 19 BBY, as the Clone Wars ground toward their conclusion, Mace Windu and General Grievous engaged in combat, and everything tactical analysis predicted came true. Grievous's psychological warfare failed against Windu completely. The Jedi Master didn't retreat, didn't hesitate, didn't provide the openings the cyborg relied upon. His purple blade moved with purpose, matching Grievous's mechanical speed. Vapad turned the general's own aggression against him, each attack feeding Windu's counterstrokes with additional power. Grievous recognized what was happening. The trajectory was clear. He was losing. So he did what Dooku had trained him to do. He ran. The cyborg broke away from combat and fled, abandoned whatever position he'd been defending, survived to fight another day against opponents less formidable than the Vapad Master. This is the distinction nobody talks about. Mace Windu possessed the combat capability to destroy Grievous in a sustained duel. The evidence suggests he was accomplishing exactly that before the general disengaged. But Grievous's survival strategy didn't require winning. It required not losing permanently. And retreat is not permanent loss. Windu had command responsibilities, a war to run. He couldn't dedicate months to chasing one fleeing cyborg across the Outer Rim while the separatist war machine continued its advance on other fronts. Grievous escaped because pursuing him would have required abandoning everything else. Could beat him. Couldn't finish him. Kit Fisto makes the case even more interesting, because unlike Yoda or Windu, Fisto wasn't at the absolute pinnacle of the Order. He was a Jedi Master, powerful, experienced, dangerous, but not legendary. Not the kind of warrior who'd make Grievous run on sight. In 21 BBY, Fisto tracked Grievous to the general's personal fortress. Accompanying him was his former Padawan, Nadar Veb, recently elevated to knight, plus a squad of clone troopers. What happened next should have been a slaughter. Instead, it became a case study in why combat parity wasn't enough. Fisto was a Nautolan, aquatic origins, unique physiology. His head tresses could detect emotional states and environmental shifts, superior night vision for the darkened corridors of Grievous's lair, reflexes honed by deep ocean hunting pressures. His lightsaber style, Form 1 Shi-Cho, was the oldest and most fundamental of the 7 classical forms. No fancy sequences, no complex patterns, just economical strikes and parries flowing from first principles. Against Grievous's 4 spinning lightsabers designed to confuse and terrify, Fisto offered something unexpected: simplicity that couldn't be disrupted. The direct duel reached effective parity. Fisto matched the cyborg's assault, met his attacks with efficient defense, refused to succumb to the psychological pressure that had broken so many others. His composure never cracked. His force connection remained steady despite every intimidation tactic Grievous deployed. Count Dooku, monitoring through surveillance systems within the fortress, observed something Grievous rarely experienced: an opponent who simply would not break. The confrontation might have continued indefinitely, might have ended with Grievous's destruction. But Grievous had prepared for situations like this. His IG-100 Magna Guards entered at the critical moment. Elite combat droids equipped with electrostaffs specifically designed to counter lightsaber wielders. The addition of multiple combatants shifted the arithmetic against Fisto, forcing him to divide attention between the general and the droids flanking him. Nadar Veb had already fallen earlier in the engagement. His anger at the deaths of the clone troopers had clouded his judgment, led him to pursue Grievous alone. Fisto survived through tactical retreat, escaped with critical intelligence about Grievous's fighting style and limitations. Afterward, Dooku added Kit Fisto to the avoid list, the same list that already included Yoda and Mace Windu. A mid-tier Jedi Master had proven dangerous enough that the cyborg general received explicit orders to flee rather than fight. But Fisto couldn't hunt Grievous alone. The fortress engagement proved that. Even with parity in direct combat, Grievous's backup, his Magna Guards, his traps, his prepared battlegrounds, shifted the odds. Hunting him alone meant dying to the factors surrounding him. Hunting him with support meant coordinating resources the Republic couldn't spare from the wider war. Could beat him. Barely. Would never finish him alone. See the pattern emerging? The Jedi Order had warriors capable of defeating Grievous in direct combat. Multiple warriors. Yoda would have crushed him instantly. Windu proved he could dominate the duel. Fisto demonstrated that even less legendary masters could hold their own. The problem wasn't capability. The problem was that combat capability and mission completion weren't the same thing. Grievous survived by running, by knowing when to disengage, by having zero pride that demanded he stand and die, by surrounding himself with support that tilted ambiguous situations in his favor. Every Jedi who could beat him shared common limitations. They either couldn't or wouldn't pursue him across the galaxy with the single-minded determination necessary to corner prey that refused to be cornered. Yoda had an institution to anchor, students to teach, a philosophical center to maintain. Mace Windu had responsibilities, command decisions, strategic leadership that couldn't be delegated. Kit Fisto was good, but not good enough to hunt alone. And Grievous never fought alone. Then there was Obi-Wan Kenobi. In 19 BBY, when the Clone Wars ground toward their conclusion, and intelligence placed Grievous on Utapau, coordinating Separatist command, the Jedi Council needed someone to end him. Not corner him, not fight him to a draw. End him. They didn't send Yoda, the obvious choice, the overwhelming force that would have guaranteed victory in any direct engagement. They didn't suggest Mace Windu, who had already beaten Grievous in combat. They sent Obi-Wan Kenobi, a choice that seemed puzzling only to people who confused combat ability with mission suitability. Yoda watched Kenobi receive the assignment. The Grand Master who could have killed Grievous in seconds sat in council chambers and approved sending someone else. Someone less powerful. Someone who would face genuine risk in the confrontation. Why? Because Yoda understood what the mission required better than anyone. He'd spent 900 years observing the difference between warriors who won battles and warriors who finished wars. He knew that his own nature, reactive, philosophical, anchored to broader responsibilities, made him wrong for this particular task. He knew that Kenobi possessed something none of the more powerful Jedi could claim, the temperament to hunt. Obi-Wan had earned the title the Negotiator during his years of Republic service. Diplomatic capabilities, preference for peaceful resolution when possible. The title obscured another truth. Obi-Wan was the Jedi who finished things. When situations required resolution rather than management, when certainty of completion mattered more than speed or dramatic success, the Council sent Kenobi. He combined diplomatic flexibility with combat effectiveness, with something rarer still, patient, methodical determination to see tasks through, regardless of duration or obstacles. His fighting style was Form 3, Soresu. Most Jedi learned Soresu as foundation, then moved to flashier forms. Obi-Wan mastered it, devoted decades to perfecting an approach developed in response to blaster prevalence, positioning the blade with perfect economy, deflecting incoming fire with minimal movement and precise timing. Applied to lightsaber combat, Soresu created a defensive shell extraordinarily difficult to penetrate, not through speed or strength, through positioning, patience, the refusal to waste energy on unnecessary movement. By 19 BBY, Obi-Wan was acknowledged as Soresu's greatest living practitioner. Against Grievous specifically, this philosophy proved devastating in a way Yoda's overwhelming power never could have. The cyborg's entire approach relied on overwhelming opponents. 4 lightsabers spinning simultaneously. A storm of cutting edges most Jedi couldn't track. Soresu didn't require tracking every blade. It required positioning so attacking blades couldn't reach vital targets. Letting the defensive shell absorb whatever the attacker threw while waiting for inevitable openings. Grievous could attack indefinitely, but he couldn't break through a defense that contained no gaps. Obi-Wan's temperament provided equal advantage. Where other Jedi felt fear facing Grievous's mechanical horror, Kenobi maintained professional detachment. He'd faced Sith Lords, survived watching his master die to Darth Maul's blade, endured 3 years of grinding warfare across the galaxy. One more dangerous opponent, however intimidating his appearance, didn't shake composure forged through decades of crisis. His verbal engagement during combat, casual remarks while facing potential death, demonstrated a mind so composed that Grievous's psychological warfare found nothing to grip. This kept his force connection intact, his reactions sharp, his defense impenetrable. But here's what made Obi-Wan different from Yoda, from Mace, from Kit Fisto, from every other Jedi who could have matched the cyborg in combat. He wouldn't stop. Not when Grievous tried to disengage. Not when the fight moved from command center to open ground. Not when the general attempted every retreat tactic that had saved him from better fighters before. Obi-Wan wasn't the strongest Jedi, wasn't the fastest, wasn't the most powerful in the Force. Yoda exceeded him in every measurable category. But Obi-Wan was patient, methodical, utterly determined to see tasks through, regardless of duration or obstacles. Grievous had beaten that kind of Jedi before. Young knights who were dogged but outmatched. Obi-Wan wasn't outmatched. His Soresu denied Grievous every advantage the cyborg had been built to exploit. And when Grievous tried to run, his standard survival protocol, Obi-Wan simply followed. The cyborg who had escaped Mace Windu, who had evaded Yoda entirely, who had survived Kit Fisto through backup and tactical retreat, found himself facing something none of his programming had prepared him for. A Jedi who combined sufficient combat capability with absolutely relentless pursuit. On Utapau, the hunt finally ended. Not because Obi-Wan was the only Jedi capable of defeating Grievous in combat, Yoda could have done it faster, more decisively, with less personal risk. But because Obi-Wan was the only Jedi capable of defeating him and willing to pursue until the job was complete. No responsibilities pulling him away. No philosophical objections to the hunt. No need for backup that Grievous could exploit. Just patient, methodical, professional determination. When Obi-Wan finally killed Grievous, using a blaster, exploiting those vulnerable organic components hidden inside the cybernetic shell, his only comment was, "So uncivilized." Not triumph, not satisfaction, professional completion of an assignment. And somewhere, across the galaxy, Yoda felt the shift in the Force, the end of something that had plagued the Republic for 3 years, accomplished not through his overwhelming power, but through his wisdom in recognizing who should be sent. Which brings us to something bigger. There's a theory that floats through Star Wars discussions, that Obi-Wan Kenobi, not Anakin Skywalker, was the real chosen one. Sounds ridiculous at first. Anakin was the prophecy, born of the Force itself, highest midichlorian count ever recorded, supposed to bring balance to everything. But look at what actually happened. Obi-Wan killed Grievous, ending the Separatist military leadership. Obi-Wan defeated Anakin on Mustafar when the Chosen One fell to darkness. Obi-Wan protected Luke for 19 years on Tatooine, ensuring the boy who would redeem Vader survived to adulthood. Obi-Wan sacrificed himself on the Death Star, becoming more powerful than Vader could possibly imagine. And when Luke finally refused to kill his father, completing the prophecy's requirements, he did so with training Obi-Wan had begun. Every critical step that led to balance passed through one man, the patient one, the professional one, the one who finished things. Maybe the prophecy needed 2 people. Maybe Anakin was the weapon, and Obi-Wan was the hand that guided it. Or maybe, and this is the part that'll start arguments, the Force chose its champion not through spectacular power, but through something harder to measure. Patience, persistence, the willingness to follow through when everyone else had moved on to other battles. Yoda could have killed Grievous, would have killed him if they'd ever fought, but Yoda's nature meant they never would fight, and the Force, in its infinite complexity, knew this, so it arranged for someone else to finish the job. Grievous ran from Mace Windu, would have run from Yoda if they'd ever shared a battlefield, escaped Kit Fisto through backup and retreat. He couldn't run from Obi-Wan. Not because Obi-Wan was faster, because Obi-Wan wouldn't stop following. That's the difference between winning a fight and finishing a war, between having power and knowing how to apply it, between being the strongest Jedi alive and being the right Jedi for the mission. Yoda understood this, had understood it for 900 years. The greatest teacher in Jedi history knew that sometimes the lesson isn't about who's most powerful. Sometimes it's about who won't quit. Subscribe for more stories like this.